Hello, everyone, and welcome to the New View podcast. My name is Mac.
And my name is Megan,
Come along with us as we dive into the world of competitive Irish dancing and beyond.
sharing perspectives, developing community, and learning from each other.
We hope you enjoy. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the New View podcast. In today's episode, we wanted to take a little bit of time to give you an explanation behind the name New View and how we sort of came up with it, because we feel it's pretty intentional the way we named the podcast and in the way that it reflects what we're sort of trying to do here with our greater mission and, yeah, the impact we want to make with the podcast. So maybe, Megan, do you want to dive into your side of how you see the name fitting in with all of this?
Yeah, totally. I mean, things might get a little complex as we kind of explain all of this, but I hope it's easy enough to follow. And by the end of it, we do a decent job explaining. But I guess to kind of just paint a little bit of like a picture to begin with, the concept of New View to me, at least, is like a change of perspective in terms of your journey, whether that's in dancing or in life or your career or whatever it is. For Mac and I, it's been through dancing. But it's a change in perspective that, yes, results and that kind of satisfaction does matter, but what stands out most to us, or me specifically in this example, is like when you look out to the audience, let's say you're on stage or you've just received your award and you're on the podium and you look out to the audience, and instead of feeling pride in your result and like satisfaction from that, it's kind of a this new perspective or a new view. Everything that's most important comes into your mind's eye. And for me, that was like my circle of friends and family and like who's most important to me, and like little moments in the studio that were really important to me. And just to maybe have this make a little bit more sense, that was my experience at Worlds this past year in 2024. I had won, and I had imagined and wanted to win for years. That has been my dream since the very beginning. So I've visualized what it would be like to, stand on the podium and have that experience. And to some extent, it was everything I imagined it to be. And I'm sure we all have things we can relate to, whether it's like also winning the worlds or getting a certain result or something. And you've imagined it so many times, it plays out exactly how you imagined it to be. But I was like overcome with this strange feeling as I looked out to this new view and new perspective that none of that actually mattered to me. What was most important were my people I could see in the audience and all the other like great talent on stage and all of those little moments that make dancing special. So for me, I would say the concept of new view is the realization that our perspective kind of expands through this art. It's not all results. Like, yep, they're great and it's awesome to have goals and work really hard, but having a new view is kind of an interesting guidepost and a way to change your outlook and satisfaction. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just love that, and I got the privilege of being at your World's party and hearing your speech at the party, and actually a few days before it as well. And like the title of it was The View, and so I don't know. I just loved the way you were able to articulate that in that speech. And I think for me, it was particularly interesting to hear it through your eyes as well, because I think I definitely had parallel experiences, but it didn't come to me in quite the same way. And maybe I just didn't have the awareness at the time. And I think for me there I love the way you put it in terms of like an expanding perspective. And I think it's really interesting to think about how we all are kind of on these individual paths, whether it's in dancing or just life in general. we all will have our own unique perspectives and unique experiences that, teach us the lessons we need to learn or help us evolve individually as we're meant to or as we want to or whatever that might be. Um, but I think what's been interesting for me is kind of in a similar way for you as a kid, just like you, I was very and have been still very driven by goals and results and wanting to achieve certain things, which I agree with you. I think that's a good thing if that's the type of person you are. It's something that you're drawn to and you're, inspired and driven to accomplish those things. That's all wonderful and great. But I think one of the most impactful things that's happened for me in the last few years, and it's definitely been a process and an evolution that I see continuing to evolve, probably. But is exactly what you're saying. It's like that expansion of the perspective. And while maybe as a younger dancer, a younger competitor, I was very narrow-minded in terms of what I'm going to get out of this experience and what it all means to me. It's become larger and larger, and I see greater meaning everywhere I look now. And now it's something I've seen once and I can't unsee it. And in fact, I can't stop seeing more things and more connections. And so that's where I think new view is really cool. And it's always a bit of a new view to me. I think every day you get up and go to the studio or choose to have an interesting conversation with somebody or whatever it is, it's always kind of a new view if you choose to look for it. And I guess to just add sort of my personal new view or my personal the way my perspective really expanded. And I would imagine that this is true for you too, Megan. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. But I had an interesting conversation with one of my dancing teachers, and it was in 2018 after I had, and this is a very candid conversation, but I had won the Worlds in 2018, and then it was that double age group that I was in, that 21 to 23. And so I won the Worlds, and then it was the North Americans that year. And if I'm just being totally honest, I was so afraid going into that North Americans because I felt like I had this pressure on my shoulders because I'd won the Worlds. And in my mind, I was thinking, well, if I don't win the Nationals, then it takes away from the Worlds title or whatever. And I was getting fairly worked up about it, and I just didn't. I knew there was tons of great competitors, and I knew there was younger ones coming up because it was that double age group, so there was a lot of unknown and just doubting myself and, should I just cut my losses and take the world title and not put my hat back in the ring? But something was telling me that that wasn't right either because I still loved what I was doing. Anyways, sorry. I'm digressing, but I ended up having an interesting and life-altering conversation with one of my dancing teachers about it, and I was just explaining how I felt and how I was, in my mind had come up with all these ideas that if I don't win the nationals, it's just going to be the worst thing ever, and it takes away from what I've just accomplished, which was my whole life's goal at that point. And um, the insight my teacher and all of my teachers, but especially one of my teachers, provided to me was kind of he offered a different perspective in that moment was why don't you choose to see this a little bit differently and instead of seeing it like, all these people that you're competing against are just a threat to your well-being or a threat to, the accomplishment that you feel like you've had and they're going to possibly take that away from you. Why don't you choose to see it as a privilege that you get to dance alongside all these other great dancers and you're considered one of those great dancers, but you get to be a part of something and that a part of something is this Irish dancing that you love so much. And in that way, like you're all contributing to just in even that day at the Nationals, like you're all going to put a great display of dancing on stage, and isn't that a privilege to be part of that? And I absolutely didn't just, I wasn't able to just absorb that and feel that and believe that right away, but there was a truth to that that I latched onto, and I think that's been something that I've really tried to continue to grow that perspective more. And it's way easier said than done because I think we all know like you can get to dancing competitions and it feels, I'll speak for myself, but if it really can feel like life or death in a way, like it's just it feels like you against the world. But I do try to really hold that other perspective and build on that. So I don't know if that resonates with you at all as well. If you, I think you would say it does, but I'll let
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, it totally does. And I think kind of what you were saying, the concept of new view is not to change and make everything brand new and pretend that that like fear and anxiety doesn't exist and that draw to like achieve specific results. We're not saying that doesn't exist. It totally does. And if you're driven to do that, that's awesome. Or if you're driven by other factors, that's great too. But the new view is not about like just looking here or changing your perspective to something else over here. It's just kind of broadening what you have and acknowledging that, yep, you want to do well and achieve whatever your thing may be, but to live with your new view or this enhanced kind of perspective is to work to appreciate those other elements, like you're saying, like all of the talent that you get to dance amongst and all of those like great factors that are a part of a competition and just like that joy that you feel on stage and all of those great things. It's the new view is the realization that those things exist and that those are like driving forces in your why for continuing to dance and your why for finding joy in this crazy thing that is very stressful and hard. It's really a realization that those wonderful things coexist for all of us, you know? For me, that's what new view is, and I think you kind of nailed that with your explanation.
Well, and I think too, I'm just building on what you were saying, but I love that word broadening as well, like broadening your perspective. And the more you do that, I think the more value you can see in almost every aspect of your experience, whether that's in dancing or the parallels that you are able to draw between other aspects of your life and dancing. And you start to see value in places that maybe it wasn't so obvious that there was that value. For example, you know, you start to really be able to recognize, I think, the value in the moments that are difficult. You know, whether that's looking back at how you handled a particularly disappointing result. I again can speak for myself and it's this always like ever continuing evolution, but I can look back at times when I got a result that I wasn't happy with and I, reacted in a particular way that I felt was the only way to react in that moment and, with a new view and choosing to see lessons in everything and value in everything, I have been able to reflect on those and, I would say evolve a little bit every time. And it's not that I'm the most stoic, mature person all the time because that's something that needs to evolve in me and that I'd like to develop. But I would say I've gotten a lot more mature and better at coping with disappointments, whether it's in dancing or outside of dancing, and um, just being able to not identify so solely with a particular outcome that I feel like must happen in order for me to be okay. I'm starting to see that there's space to not be having the perfect result every time. And in a lot of ways, those are like the greatest gifts, is the moments
Well,
when, yeah, go
and I
ahead.
don't mean to cut you off there, but I just love what you said, kind of in terms of your identity and dancing. I think New View, or the idea of having a new view for both of us, has been like quite helpful, at least in the last little bit, in terms of creating our own identity. Because as dancers and athletes and hard workers, you identify with your results and your achievements, but should things not go your way, it's hard to not have that kind of more negative reaction. And not to say that that's bad, everything has its place, but to learn from it and to grow in a way to that finds like little lessons in that disappointment and how to move forward and grow. I think the new view is powerful in that it helps create a more purposeful identity beyond um, simply your achievements. It helps you tie into those moments of learning a lesson or really enjoying a moment on stage just because you're having fun or enjoying time with younger dancers, like
Mhm.
whatever that is. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Oh, definitely. It definitely makes sense. And I'm glad you touched on the topic of identity and we're kind of double clicking on that because I think it's a really funny little thing that happens in Irish dancing and a lot of, I'm sure, other sports when you're doing something at an elite level, you kind of can't help but identify with it a lot. I think if somebody asked me to describe myself, probably one of the very first things I would say is I'm a dancer. And that's something I've reflected on a lot, and I've questioned whether that's problematic. That ranks so highly on how I identify as like I'm a dancer. And actually, this is kind of a funny thing, but I've come to the point where, and this is, there's always room for this to develop, but I've come to the point where I have just accepted, like, I'm a dancer and I'll always be a dancer in whatever capacity that is. And that doesn't have to be contingent on any result or anything. Like, that's for me to decide whether I'm a dancer or not. And I feel empowered in that. Because I think as a younger kid, I guess I felt like my identity as a dancer was, yeah, it was contingent on certain results or getting feedback or getting validation from people that I really respected in terms of my dancing. And I think I've come to the point where I've realized, yeah, all of those things are nice and I like those things, but at the end of the day, I get to choose my own identity on my own. And it's not reliant on those external validators, even though I might like them.
Mhm.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think for us, kind of what you were just talking about, part of what we hope to do with New View is to pass on what we have learned, kind of that concept of like broadening your view and perspective in dancing, and as a dancer to not be so narrow-minded. There's room for everything. There's room for that drive to achieve results, and there's room for appreciating the struggle and all of these crazy things. That's just a part of the journey for better or worse. And really, I would say our goal with New View is to kind of pass that on to younger dancers because we're a bit older now and have the opportunity to like pass on what we've learned. And if I could share that with a younger dancer, that would be like the dream, right? And I think I can say the
Yeah.
same for you, to pass on this approach because it's fun, you're happier when you can find more joy and satisfaction in what you're doing and spending so much time on. So I guess kind of that's our aim with New View. And to get a little bit more concrete with everyone, I would say New View kind of came about. Mac and I have talked for a long time about starting a podcast or some sort of outlet, kind of just to share the things that we've learned from each other and separately in dancing, because it's been extremely impactful and like if not life changing. And we've long wanted to do this, and I think we kind of got serious about it maybe this fall, so the fall of 2024. Yeah. I was visiting Mac and we were having like a great conversation. We were like, okay, what are we going to call this thing, this concept? And I don't know who came up with it. I think it was you, Mac, but
It
just
was
the
it was
idea
a
of the
collaboration.
new, yeah, I guess, but the idea of a new view. It's not an entirely new concept we're introducing to the world. I'm sure people have thought of this before, broadening your horizons and all of that. It's not a novel idea, but it's a fairly fresh idea, I think, to bring into Irish dancing and to consider lots of factors in the journey. And I think, in my humble opinion, New View really encapsulates what that means, the idea of not denying certain factors, but broadening your horizon to incorporate more and to get more out of your life and this journey and what's ahead and all that you learn in dancing. So I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you have to add to that, Mac?
Well, yeah, I think for sure what you were talking about, how, we hope to just kind of put this conversation out there. And, you and I have had the great fortune of finding each other and having these conversations. And, we just want to share them for whatever benefit they provide to the younger generations coming after us, because we've found a lot of benefit in taking the steps to like have this new view and broaden our perspectives and see value where maybe it wasn't so obvious and all of that. But I think too, like nothing just spontaneously, well, maybe, but I don't think things spontaneously just come about. I think that all of the things that we've talked about have been influenced by the people who taught us and the things that we've been exposed to growing up. And I think, I love that quote, like standing on the shoulders of giants, because I am so keenly aware that where I'm at in dancing is only, well, is largely because of all the progress and things that other people have done who came before me, um, in this art form that we love so much. Whether it's dancing wise specifically or just ways of going about teaching or philosophically thinking about the nature of competition or whatever, all of those little things and big things that happened before I came into the world of Irish dancing and then throughout my own journey allowed me to start to develop this perspective and then to talk to you about it and for that to continue to develop. And I think it's only natural to continue this conversation and for like anybody listening or people who are interested to maybe who are also already having conversations like this to contribute into it. And it's just cool to think about, okay, what are dancers, who are just starting now, 4 years old, like how are they gonna conceptualize their life in competition and how is that going to be better than it was for us? And I think that's a cute, great thing about the human race is like that we're always building on what we've left for each other, you know what I mean? Which I think is such a cool concept. And um, I just love Irish dancing. And so like the idea of getting to do that in this space is pretty cool for me. And yeah, I just think I want to emphasize this because it's I don't know, it's just really important to me is we've really talked about like broadening perspectives and whatever, and like just being able to zoom out for yourself in your experience of Irish dancing. I am speaking for myself, but I know that the blinders can come on and I can feel like I mentioned before, it's me against everyone else. But if you can find a little bit of peace or satisfaction or whatever it is in recognizing like no matter what you do, when you're dancing, when you're talking to your dancing friends, when you're working with your teacher, when you show up at a competition, no matter what the outcome is that day, you've put another little but like drop in the bucket of the world of Irish dancing and this thing that we all love doing, and you're contributing to something so much bigger than yourself, whether you have the perfect dance day or not. Um, so I find there's a lot of comfort and peace and joy in that, and I full transparency, do not 100% feel and believe that all the time, but it's something I hope to incorporate more of into my perspective and that I would love others to feel and experience as well if they're into
Yeah.
it, but I don't
And
know.
as we have more of these conversations, I think I mean, our hope is that we can all feel that more, but I hope that it goes in that way, and I see that it definitely could. But to kind of summarize what New View is for me, maybe I'll go first, if that's okay. I'll just like try and give you a quick like couple sentences of like what the concept is to me. For so I would say, to me, New View means, or New View is the realization that there is something more to this journey beyond our soul experiences. This is not a journey of solitude, and there is power in the connective kind of forces when you open yourself up to a broader horizon. So I that's how I would define it. Maybe that sounds totally crazy, but
I could not do a better job, and I'm not going to try. I just want to leave it at that because I think that's perfect. Um, yeah, so I don't know. I hope people find that exciting and not totally out there. Or maybe you like that it's totally out there.
yeah, and maybe you have a better definition of that yourself. So if you do,
Yeah.
please let us know, or if you want to like share what's coming up for you as we talk about this or explain some of our crazy ideas. Like let us know, like be a part of the conversation. We want to have anyone who's happy to join us.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and again, just to emphasize, I know we said this in the first episode, but I think it's worth emphasizing again is that, while Megan and I have quite a bit of Irish dancing experience under our belts, especially between the two of us, we by no means feel that we know everything, and we're still very much learning. And so we don't want to sit here telling you that we know the secret to life in Irish dancing or in a competitive discipline, but we just want to create a space where we can have more conversations and like create more value and create more opportunities for connection between all of us, and yeah, just a cool space as a whole. So yeah, I think that kind of sums it up for giving some more backstory on the name New View. Hopefully, it makes some sense and it resonates with you guys. But yeah, thanks for tuning in again. Thanks for joining us in this episode of the New View podcast. We hope you enjoyed.
If you have any ideas about future guests we should interview or want to connect, you can find us on Instagram at newview.collective or email us at newviewcollective.mm@gmail.com.